What's up, Louis? It's Guys here. Hope you're doing great. I had the privilege to be hosted by Leroux from Challenge to Champions, and in this video we talk about property related mistakes that so many people make. We talk about investing tips and secrets that nobody really talks about. So if you want to increase your knowledge about property, this video is definitely for you. Make sure to check out Leroux's channel called Challenge to Champions. He has some really cool interviews with some of the most inspiring people in South Africa. So if you're looking for some motivation, definitely check out his channel. Get yourself some coffee, sit back, relax, and consume some knowledge.
Louis Reinhardt, welcome to Challenge to Champion, man. Thank you so much for coming. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Leroux. No, I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, the same. Yeah, I've been watching a lot of your stuff on YouTube. The algorithm has picked you up on my side, and I get punted a lot of videos. And you do make a lot of videos.
Yeah, I try to post at least one video a week, but I'm not sure if that's the best solution. It's a lot of work, but I'm trying. Yeah.
I think it's definitely. That's probably like the minimum, yeah. But for someone who does that on the side, I do one every 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Because it just gets hectic and then you just stop it totally. So yeah. I think it makes more sense, even if you slow it down a little bit and keep it at one a week. I think that's the way to go. And your subscriber base is quite big.
Yeah, I think it's just a number, but I think I'm able to reach a lot of South Africans willing to improve their or willing to educate themselves, which is cool. It's nice to help people for free, obviously. So it's fun. I'm enjoying it. But like you mentioned, 2 a week sounds much easier, but consistency is probably the key.
Yeah. I think if you can just keep it going over a long period of time, it pays off.
Yeah,
even
absolutely.
if it's one every 2 weeks, I think it will still work.
Yeah.
But let me jump into it. Why do you think real estate is a good way to invest your money? Why do you believe in real estate?
I think it's a difficult question to answer because it depends on who's asking the question. At the end of the day, for me, real estate is a great investment vehicle. The main thing for me is leverage. I think your average individual won't be able to just buy a property cash for 1.2 or 1.5 or whatever amount it is, just buy it outright. So having the ability to use leverage to buy an asset that can appreciate over time, be paid off over time, and hopefully create cash flow at the same time is an easy way to grow your net worth. I do think that there is other or better ways to make money as well, but it's such a good way to grow your net worth for an average individual. Someone with a good credit score, someone with the will to be consistent, and someone that has a good income. It's easy to invest in property. But what I always tell people is not all property is a good investment. The asset class as a whole can be very beneficial, but not every single deal is a good investment. So, no, it can be, but it isn't always.
Yeah, I think it's like anything. You have to look at the niches of it. Like you said, with the fact that you can leverage it is a big component. What we do at Big Pond Property is we have investors because we buy multiple houses per year, and doing that on one person's name is very difficult. Doing it in a business, you have the VAT component, so also very tricky. So what we do is we have friends and family, and these friends, if they're not wanting to buy a house this year, they are not using that leverage. They can't use it for anything else.
That affordability.
They can't buy crypto.
Yeah.
They can't buy and sell a car with that affordability. They can't do anything with it. So we use that.
That's smart.
And that's something that someone else can do as well. I mean, of course, you need to learn the intricacies of it and so forth. But I agree with you in the fact that there's not a lot of easy access to capital in the way that real estate gives you access to capital.
Yeah.
And I think you can dip your toe in it and test it out with a bit of lower risk. Say, not buying a big property, doing a whole renovation on it and so forth. It's maybe easier, buying a flat.
Yeah.
you know, somewhere where you can rent it out or you can stay in it. I don't think if you're going to stay in it, it's the best investment. I don't see that as an investment.
Yeah.
It will still grow in equity over time, but that's something totally different. But if you can buy a flat that's almost cash flowing, close to cash flowing, keep it for a couple of years, your equity will grow. Someone will be paying most of your bond, and then when you want to sell, you can get that equity out.
Definitely.
Then you have created a couple of 100,000 by just having the savvy to do the whole deal, putting the whole deal together.
Now, I always ask people, how easy is it for you as a 9-to-5 worker to save, let's say, 200,000 rand? Most South Africans struggle to save 1 month's salary. So if you have the skills, like you mentioned, buying a property, creating a bit of equity, and being patient, and eventually getting access to that equity, it's an easy way to grow your net worth and to grow into bigger deals. So it's obviously, you don't run before you walk, you start small, which is very important.
Yeah. I also see it as like a forced saving method.
Yeah.
Because if you don't have that property or that bond that you should pay and that is just being deducted, then you'll probably find another use for that cash.
Definitely. Yeah,
just going to spend it somewhere
people
else.
love spending money or consuming stuff and spending money on material things. It's just part of South Africans. I think it's
materialism.
Materialism, yeah.
Yeah, it's a really big trap.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, there's nothing wrong with your phone, and every 2 years you want a new
upgrade.
phone. You get the one with maybe 5% better battery, something like that.
There's a Netflix documentary, it's called Minimalism.
Yes.
I'm not sure if you know that, but that's so cool to watch, just to kind of get a perspective of why we don't need all these things.
Why we gather shit, basically.
The amount of items your average person buys, it's insane.
Yeah, I heard a concept on that documentary where the guy's talking about, I think he calls it like reverse moving or something like this, where you stay in your house, but you pack everything into boxes.
Okay.
And you just unpack the things that you use.
Wow.
Then, like in 3 months' time, you sit with a couple of boxes that you haven't used anything of. You know, it's kitchen appliances, clothes.
Random stuff.
Yeah, random stuff.
Yeah.
And then he suggests sell those things.
Yeah.
I mean, they are probably holding you back because you're hoarding these things and you maintaining them and keeping them, and they're losing value. But all of those things are actually a bunch of cash lying there.
Actually, yeah.
And we are very entrepreneurial. We buy and sell anything we can get our hands on. We'll try and sell it. But so tell me about one of your recent videos. I saw you bought a property in Bloemfontein that it's like a multi-let that you're doing.
Yeah, the latest one was in Elof. That was a full title property, yeah. I made a few videos about that one, yeah.
Is that in Elof?
Yeah, Elof. Yeah,
that's basically Delmas.
No, Elof is the street. It's Universitas in the Free State, in Bloemfontein.
Okay.
Yeah, I just call them Elof, or the street name or whatever. Yeah.
All right. So tell me about that deal. How did you put together that deal for yourself? Why does it make sense? Why did you buy it? How are you making money out of it?
Yeah, so my strategy with property is called the BRRR strategy. It's actually a strategy. It's for buy, renovate, refinance, or rent out, refinance, repeat. And that's basically what I do with all my deals. And like we talked about with equity, the only way for me to get access to equity is to refinance. And
that's because you're not selling it.
I believe that I want to buy property and keep it forever. That's basically the mentality that I have with most of my properties. So the only way that you can get access to your equity is either to sell it or to refinance it. That's basically it. So I rather refinance. And with this specific deal, I want something that can generate cash flow. Of course, from day one, it needs to create profit, monthly profit. This will just allow me to mitigate my risk, and obviously I want to increase my income at the end of the day, semi-passive income. And with this specific deal, I bought it for 1.3 million rand, which is really quite cheap for a house in that area. So from day one, I bought it for cheaper than it's actually worth, meaning I already have some equity in the deal. So your average house there sells for 1.7 to 1.8 million rand, which is a pretty decent discount for a property that doesn't really need too much repairs. So with everyone that knows my channel knows that I focus on cash flow, and I always mention the only way to generate cash flow with property is either student accommodation or multi-lets. It's very rare to find a single let property that can actually generate cash flow unless you put in a lot of cash or if it's just bought for very cheap. So this specific deal is student accommodation, bursary students, and then it creates a certain amount of cash flow every month, and which allows me to, after I have renovated the project, go back, withdraw all my money that I put into the deal, meaning refinancing the deal, getting back all my money that I invested, and it's still cash flows after I have refinanced. And that's the most important thing with my specific strategy, is focusing on properties that can cash flow when you buy it and when you refinance the property, because that still means I was able to withdraw, let's say 600,000 rand, and the property is still creating cash flow. So ultimately it's as if I bought the deal with none of my own money, if that kind of makes sense.
Yeah. So let me go through that a little bit. Firstly, let's just discuss the term refinancing.
Yeah.
So if we can just explain it to the listeners a bit. Refinancing is basically a revaluation of the property value.
Yeah, basically.
So you can maybe discuss it in a little bit more depth.
Simply put, it's the difference between what the property is actually worth and what it is financed for. So most of the time, traditionally, people will buy a property for 1.5 million rand and they will register it for 1.5 million rand. So let's say after 10 years, the property is now worth 2 million rand. You have an equity position of 500,000 rand. So your property will be revalued for 500,000 rand more, and the only way to get access to that money is to refinance it. Some people call it a further loan, to get a further loan on the additional 500,000 rand, and that's simply where the bank will value the property, make sure that it's actually worth 2 million rand. They will look at your finances again, your credit score, all those jazz, and then they can actually pay out the equity to you. But it's still a loan. It's not just money that they give you. It's a further loan or an additional loan that you take out on your property.
Yes.
Your property is just the security for it.
You
if that makes
increase
sense.
the bond rate, so you paid 1.3.
Yeah.
Do you make sure that what you spend on the property will be covered by the refinance?
Absolutely.
That you can extract that cash again.
Absolutely. So that's the most important thing. Let's say you spend 500 or 600,000 rand, or it depends. You won't be able to pull out all the equity all the time.
Yeah.
Obviously, you have limitations with it. It's not as easy as it sounds. But I mean, if I can spend 100,000 rand to buy a property that can generate 10,000 rand profit in a month, it's a no-brainer after I've withdrawn my equity. And sometimes I don't withdraw the equity immediately. You have to wait a certain period of time for the banks to actually allow you to do that. My rule of thumb is waiting at least 6 to 12 months. The quickest I've done it is 6 months. But again, it's not this magic trick that can give you endless financing. It still needs to make financial sense, because you can withdraw that equity and your cash flow is not enough, meaning you'll just increase your monthly bond cost and your shortfall will be bigger, meaning it costs you more money. And I think that's a mistake that a lot of people make, is what I've seen people do quite often is refinancing their properties and buying a car or buying or going on vacation. Then effectively you're paying off a car over 30 years because the additional amount that you're borrowing is just a longer term loan.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's quite interesting with refinancing. There's a lot of gray areas and people don't necessarily understand why it's so useful. I think overseas, like the US market, they use refinancing quite often, but it's a bit different in South Africa. So the main key is to make sure that your property can still cash flow after you refinance. I think that's the main reason why it actually works and why you can continue to do it. But if it doesn't, then you'll find yourself in a bit of a debt cycle.
Problem, because you're gonna literally have to pay in to cover that extra finance per month.
Absolutely.
And then you need to make sure whatever you use that money for is also making money.
That's the thing.
Or it's the next property, not a car.
Yeah, exactly. So what I do is I extract the equity and reinvest it. So I don't draw money from my properties because I want to reinvest it so that I can get to a point where it's not necessary to continue
Do
doing
you
it.
use that refinancing as the cash for the next flips renovation?
Yeah, basically. Or it can just be as simple as the transfer and registration cost because you need to pay for that cash as well.
Yeah.
It can be for stuff like holding costs.
While renovating, before tenants are in, before it's cash flowing.
Before it's cash flowing.
Yeah, I mean, then you have to pay that bond for a certain amount of time.
Exactly.
And that's out of pocket.
It costs money. So I prefer using none of my own money in the sense of I can use it, but I want to get it back once it is actually working.
Yes.
Like you guys do as well, leveraging other people's money is just the easiest way to invest in property.
Yeah.
That's what makes it really quite interesting.
Yeah, and in our situation, we had to prove ourselves, of course. So we had to do 10 or so flips with our own money to be able to have an example of, look, this is what we do, this is the return that you'll get, this is how you're going to get paid, this is when you'll get paid. Do you want to invest?
Yeah. What is like the average term that you take for a property flip? If someone had to invest with you guys, what would you tell them in that situation?
It depends on property to property. The average is about 6 months.
Okay.
Because it takes 2 months to buy it. It takes 2 to 3 months to renovate it most of the time. And then again, 2 to 3 months to sell it.
Okay.
So that's the normal term which we tell people. We have done a couple in 4 months where we've taken occupation before it's registered.
Okay.
So then you win a bit of time and we pay occupancy rent. And we have also done a couple. We've done one where it took about 13 months because there was a lot of delays with the registration.
Yeah.
And that's a bit out of your control.
Absolutely.
But I mean, because we're in that game, we know it might happen sometimes.
It's part of the game.
Yeah, one property we bought here in Garsfontein, we bought it from an embassy.
Okay.
We bought it from the country, the Ivory Coast.
Okay.
So the contract work was in French. We're using their lawyers. It was a very difficult deal to do, but still, we want to do a bunch of deals. So even if one drags out long, we still have to do others in between, and we still want that one, even if it took a year.
Yeah, and you just account for the delays and everything involved. Yeah.
Yeah, luckily we didn't pay bond cost for that time.
Yeah.
We only started paying when we took occupation.
Yeah.
So it's just basically from contract signing. So that investor was basically stuck in the deal for that duration and he couldn't buy another property.
Yeah.
Luckily, they didn't want to buy another property. So we kept asking them, listen, are you sure? Are you still sure you want to be in the deal? Because we can substitute you with another investor if you want to do something in between.
I hear you.
But so that worked out for us. Let's just go back to that investment property that you did in Yellow Street. To calculate what return you're going to need out of the property, to make sure you have enough positive cash flow in the property, do you try and see, okay, this is what I'm going to buy the property for, this is what I'm going to spend on the property, then I'm going to refinance, so this is going to be my new bond. So now I need to see, okay, I'm going to rent a room out for 6,000 or 8,000. Okay, that means I need 8 people in this property to make it cash flow.
Yeah.
And then there's a number of other things to consider. All right, the amount of bathrooms that I have, the amount of parking. We've seen at a bunch of properties, we kept a couple, like the offices, we have a bunch of flats. A big thing to consider is parking.
Absolutely, yeah.
And a lot of people miss that. And a lot of the time, if the parking situation doesn't work, if you don't have access to the backyard, or if you can't fit 8 cars in the front of the property, it's not viable.
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, I think it depends on, with my specific property, you have to remember it's focused on students and it's close to the varsity. So majority, I would say 95% of students, they don't have, or the market that I'm targeting, they don't have vehicles. So technically you need to have a certain amount of parking per student on your property, which I normally focus on making sure, okay, if they had cars, you can park here and here and here. But luckily, if you have a property that accommodates 20 students, you don't have to have 20 parkings.
You're focusing like on an estimate of 50%.
Yeah, so
like,
there's
like gyms operate.
yeah, basically,
Yeah.
the idea would be that not all of the students have a car at the same time, basically. But it's obviously something to consider, because what if they do have vehicles?
Yes.
Then you're basically screwed.
Or then you know you're going to rent out a unit or
Yeah.
a bedroom to someone who doesn't have a car.
Yeah.
Then that becomes your target for that unit.
Yeah. But majority of the target market in that strategy is people that don't have vehicles. They walk to varsity. That's just how it works. Bursary students specifically. But with the return on investment, that's exactly what you need to do. You need to make sure. So the easiest way to do it, let's say your cash flow is 40,000 Rand per month, and you deduct all of your expense, or your income is 40,000 Rand a month, and you deduct all of your expenses. I'll get back to that just now. With your bond of 1.3 million Rand, you'll have to do your calculation to see what is your cash flow at the end of the month, or your return on investment. And then you have to do a second calculation with your upgraded bond or your new bond. So it's quite simple. Using I use this Excel sheet that I just use for everything, so it makes the calculations much easier. And you just replace your old bond with your new bond to see if it still cash flows, because the only cost that's going to go up is your monthly repayment. And if you can make sure that your cash flow is good enough to cover your monthly repayment, then you should be good to go. And it depends on how you want to calculate return on investment. I focus on having a good return on investment based on the money that I have to invest. They talk about infinite return. So once you refinance your property and you're able to withdraw all of your equity, technically speaking, that's an infinite return, or meaning you're buying property with no money. Obviously, you need money, but the idea behind it is using none of your own money or getting back your money, meaning it didn't actually cost you a cent to acquire that property. And
basically gambling with the casino's money.
Yeah,
You extracted what you put in, and
Yeah.
you're now working with your profits.
Yeah, that's the idea. So that's it makes it quite. There's different scenarios. Obviously, you work on assumptions, and then you get your accurate numbers or your actual numbers. So it's important to account for certain things with student accommodation. Your main concern is obviously repairs and wear and tear. For example, a normal house door opens once or twice a day. Now this door from a student commune opens 20 times a day. So obviously stuff breaks, and that's stuff that you can't really account for as a monthly expense. You can't determine how many things will break. So you need to have a buffer for repairs and maintenance, which is going to be assumptions. You can't work on actual numbers, and that will obviously affect what your return will be at the end of the day. But you still need to put some form of reserve for those type of things. That's the only things that can actually change, besides stuff like your Wi-Fi, your electricity, your water, maintenance and repairs is obviously the one expense. Stuff like garden services and cleaning services, security services, those are proper fixed expenses, whereas the repairs and stuff is not really fixed.
Yeah, and I think it's important to think of it in a way. If you are having positive cash flow, like you're making 8 to 10,000 Rand a month, that is not something that you necessarily just spend on something else. You create a bit of a buffer fund for these types of things, because your gate motor isn't going to break every month, but when it breaks, it might cost you 10,000 Rand.
Exactly. Yeah.
So then you want that reserve fund for these type of things.
Very important, yeah.
What are other things that you include as services to these tenants?
Yeah, so services is simply gardening services, cleaning services from communal areas. So the students still need to clean their own rooms, just for privacy issues and stuff getting missing and all those type of things. I do include security like armed response, and then internet obviously, and that's basically it. Oh, and then refuse removal. In Bloemfontein, we need to remove your stuff on your own expense. That's basically it. But there's certain things that you need to include when you buy the property. So you need to include it's almost like a small Airbnb if you think of it. They need to be able to live there, rock up with their bags, and they need to be able to live there. So you need your fridges, all of your appliances, your washing machines, beds, desks, lamps, cupboards, all those things needs to be included for them to be able to actually stay there for the whole year.
Okay, so you do furnished everything.
I would call it semi-furnished. Yeah,
Okay.
not everything, but I mean it's from a kettle, microwave, fridge, washing machine, your bed, your desk, your lamps, your chairs, pin boards. I include mattress protectors and fitted sheets just to keep everything nice and clean. Yeah, that's basically it. Yeah, that's it. So let's call it semi-furnished.
Yeah.
But I mean it's basically furnished.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, and a TV.
In each room.
No, a communal
Just
area.
a communal area. Yeah.
Luckily.
Yeah, we did like a high-end commune in Menlo Park.
Okay.
So we did also very nice furnished the
Yeah.
whole main area where we
Yeah.
had 5 bedrooms, and then we had 4 flats on the property
Okay.
which were totally unfurnished.
Yeah.
So where you brought your own things, and we found that market where we go more for a high-end student, where it's a lot more expensive, that they
Yeah.
look after things a lot
Yeah,
better
it's true.
and a bit more clean and so on, but
Yeah.
you still get the odd ones that
Yeah, it's students.
yeah.
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 No, it's totally true. You attract a different market when you focus on higher end students.
Yeah.
For Bloemfontein, there's not a big market for high end students. I think Cape Town or Western Cape is a massive market, like Stellenbosch area. You can get people that pays your insane amounts for rooms because there's a shortage for quality accommodation. In Bloemfontein, I feel that the rooms and the property that I give to my students is still safe, clean, and I would probably live there if I was a student. But it's not high end.
Yeah.
But that's the strategy that I try to follow.
Yeah, and you
Yeah.
have to look at your area, what's
Yeah.
needed in your area.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, currently here in Pretoria, Volley is
Yeah.
taking the student market by
Yeah.
storm. I mean, I think they launched at the start of the year like 80 units,
Wow.
and it's very high end.
Yeah. Yeah, that's
They include things like runs. Every Volley has a Plato at it.
yeah,
You know,
that's cool.
they're building a community.
It's such a cool environment
Yes.
to study. Yeah.
Yes, that's definitely, and I think a lot of it is due to the fact that the reses are struggling a bit with a bunch of laws, a bunch of things that they need to apply to, and a lot of people have said, "Listen, we're not going to sign up to that. Let's just do our own thing."
Yeah.
And I think that's due to this that created their success.
Yeah, absolutely.
Tell me about the legality, because that's also something that we struggled with. Do you register these properties as something else, maybe as like a guest house or something, or how do you get around that aspect?
Yeah, so technically it depends on the municipality, but in Bloemfontein specifically, you need to rezone. Because you have now suddenly your property is built for 4 or 5 people. Now suddenly you have 10 or 12 people on this property. So you can just imagine there's certain things that can go wrong.
The
So you-
sewage, the
yeah.
electricity, there's a lot of
Yeah,
things
yeah.
that take into account.
Which is important to focus on because this is a expense that many people forget about. And unfortunately, I hate doing anything with our municipalities because it takes time and there's always delays. So how the process works, for you to get accreditation from the university, you need to be able to rezone the property. And in my situation, we do special consent, meaning you get special permission from the municipality to run it as a student commune, because all of the applications that people have submitted to the municipality, it never gets resolved. So there's a bit of an issue with that, I would say, everywhere in South Africa, because people don't do what they're supposed to do. But the short answer is yes, you need to rezone to create a commune or get special consent from the municipality to run it as a student accommodation, which, it costs around, on estimate, 50,000 Rand just for technically a certificate. Say or being able to say, okay, this is zoned correctly.
Yeah.
So it's another expense that you obviously need to account
Yeah.
for. Yeah.
So the zoning is basically the government looking at areas and determining a density for that area,
Yes.
and determining what use can this property be used for.
Yeah, and you obviously need to get a site developer. You need to send out people that test the pressure of the water. They need to test the sewage so that they can see, can that take the capacity of 20 students? Because if it can't, you can't approve that rezoning, because imagine, asking 10 people to use one geyser, for example. It's not sufficient. So you need to make sure that it can actually work for that purpose, and which it's important. It's just sad that you need to pay for it and that it takes so long to actually, you know, be completed.
Yeah. It is a nuisance for us in Pretoria as well. It's a big nuisance, and getting anything done takes a lot of time. That's why on the renovation properties, on the flipping side, a lot of the time we buy a property that has some illegal buildings on it.
Okay.
And a lot of the time we demolish those buildings because it takes a lot less time just to get it back to plan as to get it onto plan.
I can imagine,
So we just demo it and take that into consideration when doing offer to purchase, saying you have 300 squares here, but we can only really use 240. The rest we're going to have to take down.
Yeah, but you have some leverage, hopefully, to get a lower price, maybe telling them, listen, this is not on plan. It means nothing. We'll have to demo it. But it is a mission. Anything that you do with the municipality, it's just a struggle, unfortunately.
And that's everywhere in South Africa. So, Louis, you do a bunch of things. You're an entrepreneur. Then you have the side hustle of real estate. I don't know which one is the side hustle and which one's the...
I told Danny a minute ago, I feel unemployed because I'm not really sure what I'm doing. But with the real estate, I would say real estate is a big portion of where my net worth comes from. And it has created a lot of opportunities for me. Getting access to capital, making bigger investments, taking risk as a younger individual. At the moment, I don't draw any money from my property investments because the idea for me is I would effectively want to retire at 40, like fully retire. And that's the whole idea of not, you know, living off my properties. So I almost see my property portfolio as a side income. But it creates a lot of opportunities for me. So I have used money from my properties to reinvest elsewhere, which creates more money for me. But the main thing is property and actually investing, like investing in stocks, actual companies, not trading, basically investing. So that's the other thing that has created, you know, a lot of wealth for me, if I can say it. And that sounds very pretentious, but
What do you think are some misconceptions that young people like myself who aren't invested in stocks? What am I missing?
I think people look at investing in the market and think it's an easy way to get rich, you know,
and a quick way.
And the reality is it can be. You can get lucky with certain things, but I don't want to speculate or invest based on luck. I want to,
and that's going to be high risk.
It's going to be high risk. Yeah, anything technically worth a better return is going to be more risk, but it doesn't have to be if you know what you're doing. Like property flipping, it's a high risk investment. For some people that don't have the experience, it's high risk. But you guys are educated, you have all the right skills and the knowledge. It's like second nature for you guys. So it's not really risky if I look at it. With investing specifically, like I mentioned, people think it's an easy way to get rich. Invest in whatever the biggest name is. A lot of people freak out on things like crypto, putting in your money and just kind of wishing, okay, this will go up. So that's exactly what I don't want to do. I want to find a specific company, look at the financial statements, make sure that I understand the business model. Why do this company have a creative, you call it a creative moat or a creative advantage above a different company? And why would I invest my money in this company for the long term? I invest for free cash flow. A company like myself that can invest in something after all of their expenses is deducted, they still have free cash flow left to reinvest and to grow their business. That's the model that I like to follow. But I mean, if you think of it, how many people have the time to go through annual financial statements every single day or every single week?
How many people do you think will understand it?
No, a very small amount of people. I'm still learning, and I'm a small fish in a big pond when it comes to investing, and it's a difficult thing to teach and a difficult thing to learn because you have to do the work yourself. And I mean, I have no accounting background. I'm not a very sharp pencil, so I had to figure it out the hard way, sitting and going through annual financial statements and actually risking or investing my own money over a long period of time to actually learn whether what I'm doing is working or not. So yeah, I think the misconception is people think it's easy. And if it was easy, everyone would do it. The same with like trading or whatever you want to call it. People advertise it as an easy way that every individual can do it. And I believe that you need to have certain skills and a certain mentality and certain resilience to be able to succeed in an asset class like that.
Yeah, I agree. What would you think is the best way to get started in it, to start dabbling in stocks? Or
yeah, so what I like to tell people is you can't invest in a higher risk asset if you can't take control of your finances. You know, if you don't have a good income, you don't have a good credit score, you don't have financial discipline, figure that out before you start investing. Because investing takes more emotional intelligence than just saving a bit of money. So if you don't have the emotional intelligence, stay away completely. I would say if you get to a position where you have disposable income, you have created an emergency fund, you have some form of savings that's yielding a decent return, I would start dabbling in something like exchange traded funds. It's called an ETF. It's simply a basket of funds, or instead of investing in one company, you invest in a basket of some of the biggest companies. And effectively you're spreading your risk or diversifying. Of course, your return will also be a bit lower. But over the longer term, and when I say longer term, I mean 5 to 7 years, you should be able to walk out profitably from that deal. The thing is, you know, people like Charlie Munger or Warren Buffett mentions invest in the S&P 500 because your average individual will be able to benefit from that. They don't invest in that because they have the skills to pick individual stocks. And just because you invest in it now, I don't want to benefit from an investment in 40 years. That's boring. And I think that's where people get overeager investing and risking and gambling their money to get rich quicker. But I believe there's no way to get rich quick. It takes consistent effort and a lot of mistakes over a long period of time, if that makes sense.
That does. How do you think the extraction of that value looks? Does it look like paying yourself a type of dividend at the end of a term? Does it look like selling all your stocks at some point and maybe putting that into real estate because then you have cash? Or how do you think of it?
It again depends on your situation and your age and your risk appetite. Let's say, for example, you're an average individual that invested 100,000 Rand. You magically turned it into 500,000 Rand. You don't want to benefit from that money once you're 65 years old. It will be a pretty decent amount. But what I do is I get to a point where I've reached my goal and I withdraw the money. I don't mind paying taxes. If I'm making money, it means I'm going to pay taxes. So it's a good thing to pay taxes, in my opinion. And then I'll take that money and reinvest it somewhere else. But you can just keep it there for the rest of your life and benefit from it once you retire, and maybe paying a lower tax rate once you retire. Or you can, depending on the investment that you make, get dividends. And it also depends on the vehicle that you use. Is the investments made in your own personal name? Is it in a trust, or what is it? So it really depends at the end of the day. But ultimately, I think this is a question that so many people ask is, you'll have to pay taxes. If you have investments, and that's the advantage that property has, there's many ways to reduce your taxes. With stocks, if you make 100,000 Rand profit, that's profit. There's nothing else to deduct from it.
There's no expenses.
There's no expenses. So you're going to pay taxes. And so many people make investment decisions based on taxes and not on profit. I don't care paying taxes if I made profit. Obviously, I want to pay as little taxes as possible, but I don't make my decisions based on taxes. But yeah.
Yeah, and like you said, in property, it's a very good avenue where you have a lot of deductibles.
Absolutely.
Where you can, at the end of the month, bring down your profitability.
Yeah.
Because it's expenses that you have already.
Absolutely.
The interest on your building that you've bought, and all the other expenses that you're running.
Definitely. Yeah. So that's, again, massive advantage. Easy way to reduce your taxes. And depending on your strategy, you can effectively pay no taxes while growing your portfolio longer term, if that is what you want to do. So the cool thing about property is there's so many different ways that you can invest in it. You know, from flipping, BRRRR strategy, Airbnbs, full out student accommodation, multi-let, single-lets, wholesaling, whatever it is. There's so many opportunities when it comes to property. That's why I think it's a cool vehicle to use.
And even though you don't have the capital.
Even if you don't have the capital. Yeah, I think it takes a different mindset to be able to raise funds. And I had a friend that says anyone is replaceable except someone that can create a deal, or you call them a deal maker, someone that can bring people together for funding to invest in whatever it is. That's a certain type of individual or certain skill required to be able to do that.
Yes.
And I don't think a lot of people has it.
Yeah. No, Louis van der Walt from Atterbury, he used to go as a student. He went from house to house there in Hatfield. He actually went to my aunt's house. She was an employee of Tux. And he went there and he said, listen, would you be willing to sell this property? The person next door and the one next door to that, they all agreed they're going to sell it, and there's going to be a big development here. And then he sold basically those contracts to a developer. So he's just putting, he's getting the funding, a guy who's going to do the development. Here's the seller, and he just put the whole deal
Creates
together.
A deal from thin air.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
very impressive.
I think spotting those opportunities are a difficult thing to do, but once you notice how it works, you can see some opportunities.
No, absolutely. I liked what you said with, getting funding from your family and showing them, listen, we know what we are doing. We have a proven track record. If you can get a track record or prove that you can do what you're selling, then it's much easier to accomplish it. And
it's gonna be the most difficult part because like we do the property flipping course and everything, and we can tell people there how we do it. We get investment and this and that. But you need to start, and that initial startup is the most difficult part because you're going to be using your own money and you're going to be making mistakes with your own money. But I also think that is the best way. You don't want to be making mistakes and being liable to someone else.
No, definitely not.
And having a bond on someone else's name on something that's not going to work now.
That sounds stressful.
Yeah, no, I think it's terrible. So you need to pay your school fees yourself.
Yeah, definitely.
And like I said earlier, it probably is doing a flat or something a bit lower risk, easy turnover. Easy to let out, easy to rent, and probably a little bit easier to sell if you need to.
Yeah.
What do you think? Have you heard of the concept of house hacking?
Yeah, so I've watched your videos. I know you make cool content on that, but it's something that I recommend as well. I don't do it myself, but I think it's a great way to get into property and to effectively live very cheaply and own real estate at the same time. And even if you really know how to find those deals, be able to profit from it. So
so what I did is, and my brother got me to do this because he bought a house, I think it was 10 or 12 years back, way above what he could afford because it had 4 flats. So it's a big sum that you have to create. Okay, I'm paying currently rent 8,000 Rand at someone else's property or at our commune, or that was what it currently was at that stage. And then he said, okay, so I basically have 8 available. So I can go buy a flat for 700, whatever the amount is, pay that 8 and then own a flat. Or I can group a bunch of people. So he bought a big property, about 500-600 squares. That was a little bit set up for this, but he renovated the garage into another unit. There was a workers unit at the back, which he also renovated. And then there was one big flat, which he split into 2. So now the accumulation of these 4 tenants paid the whole bond. And he was left over with a 300 square house, 2,000 square stand that was basically paid for. He basically paid the rates, taxes, and electricity. So then he got me to do a similar thing. And I did it on a bit of a smaller scale. So I was paying, at our commune, I was paying 7,000 for a flat. So he told me, this is how you can level up. You're jumping a stage. So I bought a property in Garsfontein, a 3-bedroom house with a garage on the side. And how we looked at it is you want to have it in a way where you can have 2 entrances.
Yeah.
Because if you're going to have tenants that leave your gate open and maybe trip your alarm, things like that, you're not going to be able to keep that going for a long time, especially if you're married, maybe you have kids.
Yeah.
You're not going to keep that going. So what I did then is I found a property. It was in real bad shape for 1.2 in Garsfontein. It had its orientation on the stand was good. It was parallel with the street, so it was laid out in a straight line, not in deep, but parallel with the street.
Yeah.
So that makes it easier to split.
Yeah.
So then we put in another gate. I renovated the double garage into a flat, and I cut off the main bedroom of the house with the main bathroom of the house, and that was the second flat, and they were the one behind the other. So then I had 2 parkings. They had their own gate. They could come in on the side. Those 2. So I bought the property for 1.2 million. I spent 300,000 renovating both flats. So it was 150 each. And then with the house that we were left with, I did the bare minimum, painted the kitchen.
Yeah.
I had a ox blood bathroom for me and my wife, 1 bathroom, and we stayed in, we had the 2-bedroom house.
Yeah.
So small bedrooms, but that got us into it. And that was a great deal because now I have this property that effectively cost me 1.5. It's cash flowing 15,000 a month.
Oh.
So I'm basically living for free.
Yeah.
I'm paying the electricity.
Oh, you're getting paid to live.
Yes, yes. And then when I sold it 3-4 years later, I took out the equity. And that made a lot of sense because now I'm selling a house, but it's actually a running concern.
Yeah.
Because I'm giving the next person
They can create
something
money,
that's
yeah.
cash flowing 15,000. So
Yeah.
they can buy something that they can't really afford.
Yeah.
And then it gets you from thinking I should buy a flat
Yeah.
to buying a house.
No, that's impressive.
Then I did the next one. I bought another house after that. I did again the same 2 flat units. I cut off a garage with a study and a workers' living quarters again. Made it 2 flats. Again, separate entrance. The whole yard is blocked off, so you don't know there's tenants there.
Yeah.
And I rented it out for 1 year, full time. Then I changed the 1 flat to an Airbnb, to test the waters. And it did really well. A little bit more than double which you would get with a full-time tenant.
Crazy.
And then I turned the second one into an Airbnb as well. So if you're looking at rental income,
Yeah.
it's basically as if I'm renting out 4 units now.
Yeah.
So I think a big misconception, it's a passive income. It's not.
Yeah.
It's
No.
not. It's a lot of work.
Yeah.
It's a lot of work.
Especially with the Airbnbs on it now.
Yes, yes. But you do manage to put some structures into place. Cleaners,
Yeah. You outsource the
yes,
work.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you outsource the things that are cheap to outsource.
Yeah.
The things that are expensive to do, the management of the property. I don't want to give 20% to some management company.
No.
I just manage it myself.
It's not that difficult.
Yeah. And I think it's always good to take into consideration, say this thing's making 30,000 a month. What else would you need to do for 30,000 rand a month?
Yeah.
Then you would think, okay, the fact that it's not passive, the amount of work that I need
Yeah.
to do to create that cash flow
It's very small amount.
Yes.
Imagine you put it into amount paid per hour. Let's say you spend 10 hours in a month on that project. If it's 10 hours, probably less.
Yeah.
And you work out what you get paid per hour for the work that you put in.
Yeah.
It's insane. And I mean, that's the average salary a professional would get if they are educated.
A
and
young engineer.
yeah, it's insane. Yeah, so that's very cool.
Yeah.
But what's obviously what I would think is very important is the layout, and not all properties works for that situation. So privacy, I think, is very important. And having the
Yeah.
2 gates is ideal.
Yeah.
And certain layouts will work, not all properties will
Yes.
work. So being able to spot those is,
Yes.
again, a skill.
So I think there's a bunch that can work. The one way in which a lot of them do work is by having a panhandle.
Yeah.
You know, like they do duets in Pretoria,
Yeah.
where you just basically need a driveway round the side of your house or something like that, cutting off a piece of your yard.
Yeah.
So it is a sacrifice. It's a little bit of a sacrifice. Having done now my second one, I think we've done it better. If you came to my house, you wouldn't know that there's a tenant. You would think it's your
Yeah.
neighbor.
Yeah. That's
You
nice.
know, so that works well, and you learn these lessons. A second thing which I saw now is a really important factor, which I didn't know was going to be as important, but having small yards at the properties,
For every family or individual living there.
pet friendly.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
That is a
Yeah.
massive thing, because the real estate that you can rent, the Airbnbs and so on, you know, all the units next to Menlyn Mine, brand new, very fancy, hotel living,
Yeah.
not pet friendly.
That's a great tip. You have to think as a consumer, like, what do
Yes.
I need to actually when I'm going
Yeah.
to this area? That's
And you
very
know,
smart.
COVID caused everyone to buy a dog or a cat or some type of companion. And I mean, then COVID stopped,
Yeah.
or all the regulations stopped. But now you have the pet.
Yeah.
So it's not like you're just going to give the dog away
Yeah.
now.
Yeah, that's
So
smart.
having a place that's pet friendly, next level, that was one thing that I saw really made a difference. And then another cool thing is anything that I'm doing at my property now, like solar, I'm getting, the tenants are getting benefit out of me having solar. So I'm actually also getting benefit of them being there, because if you had a rental property, it would be a really good selling point or renting point to have solar.
Absolutely.
But just, you know, dropping 100,000 Rand on a rental unit to
Yeah.
give them solar,
That
it's
doesn't
not
make
as
sense.
easy, not as nice. But now I'm benefiting of it as well, because
Yeah.
it's the same property.
Yeah. No, that's
So
smart.
I've seen a lot of cool things which makes it even more of a good deal. But it's like you said, you want privacy. Privacy is a big thing. You want to separate it totally so your security isn't compromised. You know, you want to be able to have an alarm. You want to be able to have beams outside. You want to be able to have pets. Someone leaves the gate open, there goes your dog, you know. It's then you're not going to be able to do it long term.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's very plausible to do things like this, you know, renovating a garage into a flat if you're going to have it for 1 year.
Yeah. No,
It's
definitely
not sensible.
Yeah, so with a property like this, would you ever move out from the main house and also just rent that part out?
Yes.
Yeah, which is also cool because as you upgrade, you can just put someone else in that part.
Let me give you another kicker on that.
Yeah.
So I have a friend who built an amazing property in Sable Hills. Massive property, really top of the line. And then I saw him at the gym and he told me, no, he's going away the weekend. Someone rented his house. I said, what? You're renting out your house? He said, yes. He built this amazing thing. People want to come stay there. And he trained like his housekeeper, what she needs to do when they are going out and other people are coming in, everything. I told him, okay, so what makes it sensible for you to move out of your house for a weekend? He told me he charged 21,000 for his house per day. So you have to
Wow.
know this is a next level property.
Yeah, I can imagine.
It's massive. It's like 500 squares next to the lake. He gives like his toys, you know, like a jet ski and
Oh, yeah.
things. He adds it
The
in
whole
the deal.
experience.
Yes. So that's the selling point that he has. But then I thought about it and my concerns about it. You know, firstly, would you want people in your house? I thought about it. Not really. But then I thought again, what really is there? If there was a fire, what would I be sad about? And I really couldn't name a lot of items.
Yeah.
So then we thought, okay, let's maybe give it a try. For what amount of money would we move out of our house for a weekend? So then took photos, put it on Airbnb, tested it out a bit, and then we rented it out for 4,000 Rand a day. So this is a 130 squares, you know, small. I only make available 2 bedrooms. Then I have one that I can lock up things which I don't want people to use or whatever. And we're renting it actually out now from Friday to next Friday to people from America.
Wow.
So what I did then is I put the house on Airbnb and then I close it off totally. Then I just open it up for times that we would want to go away for.
Yeah.
So basically now school holidays.
Yeah.
So close it down, make it available for rental. And now it's rented out for a week. So we have a paid vacation.
Yeah. That's pretty cool.
So,
And I mean, for the bit of inconvenience,
Yes.
you're getting a reward for that.
Yes.
It's by slim. That's very
and
smart.
there's some hacks around it, you know, like I don't want my wife to have to pack out her whole wardrobe and everything. So we lock those up. I just move my pair of pants and so on so the people can use my cupboard space. And then we have the guest bedroom.
Yeah.
So the cabinets are locked again. Then I have a chest of drawers and a rail mounted onto the wall. So that
all they
space is
need,
usable
yeah.
again.
Yeah.
And then there's like one bedroom that we lock off where we have personal things and so on. And like one pantry cabinet in the kitchen that is locked.
Okay.
I mean, all the rest,
Yeah.
you just... And I think you would be surprised with like, especially at a certain price point, where people really look after your things. And then also Airbnb have a really good insurance
policy, yeah.
Yes, they will replace basically anything if
Yeah.
you show proof that it's missing or broken.
But it's smart. You kind of minimize your risk by targeting a certain
Yes.
audience. Or
You don't want to make it cheap.
No.
Like I had it open for rent over December, and I had a bunch of requests. You know,
Yeah.
like 10 people wanting to rent it. But then I look at the rentals. You know, someone told me they want to have a small get together with about 20 people. No
Yeah.
thanks, this is not going to work. But then at the end, I had a guy from Pietersburg coming for a family Christmas with his family, and
Yeah.
they don't want to stay with the other family. So
Perfect.
works both ways. And I think just again, your house is one of it's probably most people's biggest investment. And it's not creating any income for you. Nothing at all. It's just the
Costing you
expense.
money, yeah.
So I was thinking, how do I get any value from this except for the equity that's growing over time?
Oh, that's smart. You effectively turn your liability into an asset.
Yes.
Yeah. I think most people won't even think of it.
Yeah.
Or not be
Or
even
most
willing
people will say, you know, I would like that,
to. Yeah, but not.
but I'm not prepared to sacrifice something for it.
Yeah, I think that's actually quite interesting. People are so comfortable with their lifestyles, or set in their ways, that they won't be willing to make sacrifices.
Yeah. And people will be massively in debt,
Yeah,
but they won't sacrifice a portion of the yard
Yeah.
because of the inconvenience
that is
of
so
it.
true. That is so true. Yeah,
But then I say, well, what more do you want to hear from me? I can't. What is the word for that? I kan nie jammer voel nie.
Yeah,
You
no,
know,
I agree.
I can't have remorse for the situation.
No, you can't
because
help
there are
someone
ways.
like that. Yeah, you
Yes,
can't help someone like that.
there are tools available.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Louis, I love that conversation.
Yeah, thanks,
This was
Louis.
beautiful. I really enjoyed it. I like it when similar minds meet and you're busy with the same things.
Yeah.
You are creating amazing content.
Thanks, man.
I have a lot of respect for that because I know what goes into your content and
Yeah, it's work.
the editing and the planning and scripting and all of it. I think only people really appreciate it who's done it.
Yeah, you know how much work it actually is.
Yes, and I think you do an amazing job. And we're going to do some other content as well,
Looking
doing some
forward to it.
collaboration.
Yeah.
And I appreciate your time, man.
Yeah,
Thank
thanks.
you so much.
It's
for the
nice.
chat.
It's nice to have the chat. I like learning, so it's interesting to hear all these things that I don't always think about. So it's nice learning from someone that has the right skills as well. It's always cool. So thanks for having me.
Appreciate it, man. Thank you.